What is going on with Larry Vickers? By now, you may have heard about the massive amount of trouble that he has pled guilty to in federal court for largely two different things: being part of a company that allegedly was in violation of international sanctions laws here in the United States, as well as violation of law enforcement letters. What does that all mean? And also, are there actually ATF raids going on right now related to all this? I'm here with noted firearms expert Michael Kwiatkowski, FFLExpert.com, who's going to help me sort it out. So guys, let's get into it. Larry Vickers, big Delta Force operator, super well-known voice in the Second Amendment world for really over a decade at this point, might be going to prison, has now pled guilty to federal charges. Mike, what's going on?
What's going on is a disaster. People claim, and he has signed admitting to doing things to evade sanctions, as well as some funny business involving LE demo letters.
So let's start with the sanctions. Just really quickly, what's the gist about what it is that he has admitted to doing?
Back in 2014, I believe there were already sanctions in place against Russia, specific Russian businesses, that you couldn't do business with these people, you couldn't get technical information from them, persona non grata. One of them was the Kalashnikov concern, and he ended up getting parts, appears potentially guns, and also technical data from them, as well as some other audio, video items, advertising, things like that. And he put it in text format of how to do these and how to get around them. And he was caught.
Now, it looks like per the allocution that he signed here that he acknowledged to bringing in parts, services, exchanging money. I mean, we may disagree with the law, we may disagree with a lot of different things, but I guess my point is that it doesn't look like this was a close call about whether or not he would have been found guilty at trial. Is that fair to say?
No, that is very completely fair to say. When I look at the report, or as they call it, the IEEPA conspiracy, count number 2 specifically, there's talking about technical data for Kalashnikov-related firearms. There is, could you please get some parts for my broken AN-94 out of Russia? There's money changing hands.
There's shipments being discussed and having already been received, it looks like, in the United States.
One of the statements here, they were talking about, don't worry when the sanctions end. Our first flight out will contain our guns. And he put it in writing too. There's absolutely no close calls or splitting hairs here. No matter what you think of the law, and this particular law has been in place since the 70s. It was modified and enlarged, Patriot Act and similar. There are no close calls here. They knew what they were doing. They tried getting around things. They got caught.
Yeah, and speaking as an ex-state prosecutor and criminal defense attorney, I wish I could say I was surprised every single time I see people like this who ought to know better, so to speak, about what they put in writing. But at this point, I'm really not surprised at what people put in writing. Right. It just is what it is, right? Okay, so anything else to add for the sanctions?
Just for the sanction portions, I would say one thing for all SOTs out there, FFLs, if you know that there are sanctions in place, whether against a company or against a country, don't try evading them. It just doesn't end well, especially when you're mixing above-board business and funny business. Don't do that.
Fair enough. You mentioned something else. Law enforcement letters. Let's start out, just quickly educate the audience on what's a law enforcement letter, and then we'll pivot into how does it play in here.
Okay, the main purpose, or main use, I should say, of a law enforcement letter is it is a letter from a police department. I believe also Atomic Energy Agency can come in there and a few others. and say, we would like a demonstration of this particular machine gun. When they're saying that, they are always talking about what are called post-86 dealer samples. The door on machine guns was closed May 19th of 1986. Any machine gun registered on or after that date is restricted to law enforcement or government use only, or SOTs. The ATF put this letter system into place to try to stop the spread of these post-86 machine guns. In order for a dealer, manufacturer, or importer to get hold of a post-86 dealer sample machine gun, they need to have a letter signed requesting a demonstration. In this particular case, it appears that Vickers and some of his co-defendants, who were chiefs of police and other law enforcement agency specialists, went and essentially they made fake letters. You would have a small town somewhere requesting to see something. There would be no demonstration ever done. It was just a letter, hey, we want this. And that let Vickers and others obtain these firearms. They wouldn't do the demo and have something for their collection that they couldn't otherwise easily get. Or one of the other tricks is to then chop the receiver and sell the parts kit, which is worth quite a bit of money on the collector's market.
Right, particularly when you're importing in things that are not legal to import. That's probably quite a lot of coin, a lot of scratch there. So we talked about fake. It wasn't like necessarily, and I realize that the documents that you and I are in possession of, they're not thousands of pages of discovery, right?
Correct.
We're in possession of what would appear to be the allocution. This is what Mr. Vickers, as well as some other folks, including a number of attorneys, basically signed off on as being substantially true and correct, and sufficient to form the basis for the plea and the government's agreement with him. So we don't have a tremendous amount of detail, but it would seem that, to kind of build to your point, that it looks like there's two separate police chiefs who basically went out there and fraudulently concocted some letters, some law enforcement demonstration letters, for really the explicit purpose of getting around a lot of these laws. In other words, they were not earnestly looking to do this. They were just simply doing this to create a paper trail so everything looked fine at a glance. Is that safe to say?
That is safe to say. For example, these small police departments, would they have use for an M16? Sure, absolutely. That's quite reasonable. Would they have a use for an AN-94? Probably not extraordinarily unlikely. If someone were doing counterterrorism training for the appropriate department or group, I could see someone requesting a sample letter for training purposes. You're getting these special forces people who are going out there doing their thing. You may encounter this, and it's happened where they have had to use captured enemy material in order to achieve their mission. Understanding how it works, how it operates, and how it functions, there's nothing wrong with that. But when you have, I think one of the departments was in rural North Dakota, and I do not recall if it was this one or the other department, I think out of North Carolina. Why would a department with a requirement that any expenditure over $300 be reported to someone on the town board need an AN-94? Or if we're talking historical, I've seen letters for like a Vickers gun out of World War II, World War I. Why would they have a need for anything like that? And ATF is looking at those things. If you have a law enforcement demonstration letter, you're an SOT, they've asked for an MP5. That is perfectly reasonable for a department of any size. If they're asking for 6 Lewis guns, an AN-94, that just doesn't make any sense. And ATF is watching those letters because they've caught on to this.
So I don't usually like to participate in gossip or throwing things out there, but in this particular case, I suppose you could say it's what I'm going to do. There's an unverified claim that surfaced on a well-known internet forum indicating that the ATF has already begun making downstream raids on people who they believe to be in possession of AK-12s. So I don't know if that's true. It was, I believe, from an anonymous person who just created an account and posted that up. But the point being is the government's going to take this stuff very, very seriously if they believe that there is any kind of violation of any of these import laws. You know, this is not something that's super obscure, doesn't make a lot of sense, and we see lax enforcement of. 922R comes to mind. And I'm not suggesting that people violate that. I'm just using it as an example of I don't see waves of mass incarceration due to 922R. This is not 922R. This is something where they are actively hunting people down who they believe to be in the stream of commerce, who may have been involved with this stuff, whether it's bringing it in, trafficking, being in current possession, you name it. And, this is not none of the laws are laws that you want to be screwing around on. But this was definitely not one of the laws to be screwing around on.
Well, I suppose to back up, when you mentioned the AK-12, we didn't really explain that is the company that Mr. Vickers had some association with. And that would have been the U.S. company that would have benefited from his actions here. Is ATF out there rounding up those firearms which were created using unlawfully imported technology? We don't have any independent verification of that. These are unsubstantiated internet rumors, and when I reviewed it, it appeared to be from a brand new account with one or two posts. However, are the products from that company created through unlawful means? Unfortunately, yes. Will ATF go after innocent buyers of those? I hope that's a can of worms they simply just decide to leave alone, but one never knows. And this is not ATF's first time looking at improper use of demo letters. There's another case, I can never pronounce his last name properly, but Von of autoweapons.com, and they have no association with this web channel as far as I'm aware. There was funny business with letters there too, and he ended up in prison over that. And it's amazing to me that the company wasn't destroyed. I know his wife attempted to take it over after his conviction. He became a felon. I know that there was some litigation over that, and I believe ATF won. So I'm not sure who is quite in charge of that now. But this is not the first time they've gone after funny business with demo letters. So I cannot stress enough to SOTs out there, do not play games with law enforcement demonstration letters. And if you have a legitimate demonstration requested on a letter, do that demonstration. And I would encourage you to keep records somehow that you did the demo, who was there, what occurred. You may even want to note who brought the ammo, what range was it at, what happened, were orders taken. Just keep it there. At worst, you've wasted a sheet or two of paper. At best, you've saved yourself from a lot of trouble.
And you would know as being the FFL Expert, FFLExpert.com. And for those of you on Breaking the Fourth Wall, for those of you who don't know Mike as I have for well over a decade, he has done an awful lot to save a lot of grief and harm coming down to manufacturers as well as FFLs. As an expert on ATF regulations and as a non-lawyer consultant. So be sure to check out his website if that sounds like anything of interest for you. We're going to close with our quote of the day coming from author Heinlein. Quote, "Don't handicap your children by making their lives easy." Something I think a lot of people are going to find a lot of truth in and a lot of people are going to push back on. Mike, I appreciate you coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for sticking around to the end of the video. If you enjoyed this one, please feel free to check out some of our other great content, and we'll see you in the next one.